biggest challenges faced when you dived into something so different from your previous career?
Yeah, challenges. I can talk about it for 3 days, 3 nights. But I guess apart from the generic challenges of say funding, finding the right people, developing the right culture, one challenge that is specific to the area that I'm in now really is that I think many problems are structural in nature. So you talk about helping people who are a little bit more less off, or what the World Economic Forum would call based on pyramid. Their problems are most of the time complex. For example, right, if you talk about housing, and you talk about job and skills, all right, job and skills, they have some needs, they have some challenges, but many times it's also tied to family issues, it's tied to housing issues, they don't have a house, it's tied to maybe mental health. It's a lot of issues that's tied together, and it's difficult. It's a difficult societal problem to look at. In fact, if you ask me, over the last 2 years, mental health has gotten a lot of attention.
Attention, that's right.
And that is something that, again, is complex and is intertwined with all these other problems, livelihood.
There's no one-way solution to that.
So, to me, the biggest challenge, again, back to my earlier point, that there are a lot of good efforts out there. There are a lot of people that's involved in the space. But what is the best way to look at this, to bring to the table solutions collectively, because nobody can do it alone, collectively, to solve a very complex problem. So to me, that is the biggest challenge that is out there.
You can tell us more about your family and how they have been part of your big journey, regardless is it for your career or maybe specific life milestones. I'm sure that they were a big support to you throughout these 15 years in your serving in the career.
Right. My family.
Yes.
Yeah, my wife is a superwoman, and she has given me a son who just turned 7, so just entered primary school. And I have a new, okay, not so newborn anymore, turning 9 months, a daughter. So family of 4, 2 kids. So a very interesting question. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, they do suffer some form of damage in their family life. This is true. Spouse become very important, because when the other partner, when one of whoever, whether the man or the woman, when one goes into entrepreneurship, it is invariably risky. I'm very thankful because my wife has always been supportive, and maybe she has grown accustomed that I have this kind of DNA.
This kind of lifestyle.
So in our earlier days when we weren't even married yet, I think she wasn't that supportive. But anyway, now I think she's gotten a lot more used to it. But I think also it's important to take calculated risk, because I've seen people, while entrepreneurship is risky, they go too far, and that kind of risk actually bear a lot of damages. Again, I use the word damage to the family. Consequences and damages. So I think it's a fine balance, and of course everyone is different. Every relationship is different, but I think generally it's really important to have family members who support each other. So I'm very thankful that I do have that.
That's great. That's great. Having a supportive family is so important, not just in career, any decision you make. So it's great to have a superwoman behind your back. They say behind every man there is actually a superwoman supporting, right? I think that is very true in your case. So prior to this, we had a conversation before. You told me that you had a near-death experience in the UK, and which really changed your mindset about passing down values to your children.
Yes.
Maybe you can share more about that. How did that happen, and what was actually your thought process about passing down the values and life lessons to your children?
Yeah, my near-death experience was more like I had a lot of time just on the bed, not doing anything, thinking, in pain, and you're right, uncertain, because I wasn't sure what it was. And so in that time of reflection, I get a glimpse of what it would be like at the end, at the deathbed. And I learned 3 lessons, and these are pivotal to my worldview. Actually, it's not so much about our life or whatsoever, but my worldview, how I view the world and and the days ahead. So 3 things. Number one, again, pain is very painful, so health is important. I don't think I remember very clearly at that time I was thinking death is better than whatever I'm going through, because death ends suffering, right? And in terms of pain, okay. But when you're sick and you're going through a time where it's very painful and very difficult, then I think that's worse than death. So in my mind, I was like, okay, health is really important. I don't really want to go through another period of such suffering. That's one. Second was really about relationship, and also the material goods. So at that point, when I was on the bed, my son was only 1 year old, around one, yeah. So I look at him and I think about, if I were to pass away, then I cannot watch him grow up. But I think more importantly, I was thinking like, oh, I cannot teach him lessons that he may need to learn when he's 10 years old, when he's 20, when he's 30. I can't do that because I'm not around. I was also thinking about, have I been a good father? Have I been a good friend? Which I wasn't a good friend. Have I been a good boyfriend, husband? It's all about relationship. And that really stuck with me. I wasn't thinking about anything to do with material. I wasn't thinking about my car or whatever, my house, whatever. So that's relationship. I think that's what people would really be thinking about. I mean, I read about it, but when I was there, I realized that it's true. I wasn't thinking about money or anything. Then finally, I was thinking about impact. So for me, I then look back at my life. I think at that time I had about 9 years of working life, and I thought about my work and my career. And I actually felt deeply that the nurse that was attending to me has brought me a lot of impact, because without the nurse, I wouldn't be comforted in that situation. I think about my own job and I question whether I have actually left any impact in society. So I make this statement not to judge, because I think all jobs are good. But personally, I was like, okay, if I survive this, I think impact is going to be important to me moving forward in whatever career choices that I make. So that was my experience and what I learned, that 3 things out of that near-death experience. I started talking to your team because I was sharing that just casually that because of my experience, I actually started writing letters to my son. Because of what I just shared, right? I don't know whether I'm going to be around, and so after I have fully recovered, I don't take it for granted that nothing's going to happen to me. I'm going to live to 100 years old. I don't take it for granted, because nobody can. And so I started thinking, think of it as an insurance. That's how I think of it.
Okay.
What if for whatever reason, I'm not around? Then how do I ensure that I can pass down some lessons that I learned to him at the right time? Because when he's 5, 6, he cannot understand lessons that I want to teach a 20-year-old him.
Yes.
So then I started I have a book and I started writing lessons. So things that I go through. For example, I was just looking at it yesterday because I know I'm coming here to talk about this. I took out the book and I saw some of the lessons, and it is something that I went through. It's almost like a diary, almost like a journal. And then I write thinking that, okay, I'm talking to a 20-year-old man, and I want you to read this when you're 20-year-old. Because then you can understand. Maybe, for example, to teach him what I learned as a father, the mistakes I've made. He wouldn't understand when he's a teenager, but it's something that I want him to learn when he's a father. So I started writing these type of letters, and then when I talk to your team, I'm like, okay, that's wonderful, because then I have something that's not on paper.
The memory
that's
capsule,
on,
right?
That's on the app. And your app, I think, has a lot more things. So I'm like, that's wonderful. That's exactly what I would have needed.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's great. I mean, to pass on, it's like memory, it's like, team camps, right? Like writing letters, but all virtually done. And you can actually arrange your own timestamp what particularly you want to share with. Even it's just not limited to letters. Yeah, you can have audio, you can have photos and videos. So actually, you can leave something of a much more personal touch. Moving on to the final questions of the day. I mean, as a millennial for yourself.
Am I a millennial? How do you define millennial?
The older millennial.
Oh,
the older millennial. Do you think such an app like Heritance Digital would be relevant when we advocate passing down values instead of valuables? Like what you have said, your 3 lessons, right? You didn't talk about the tangible assets, you talk about the valuables. Do you think that this is relevant for them, for millennials down your age?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I actually first heard of this phrase from you like now, value over valuables. But I think that's a very good way to put it. It resonates with me. I think that's what I think is more important. So values are more important to my kids. Less of how much I can live for them. So I think I totally support this notion that values over valuables. I think that's very important, and values should be something that's deeply anchored in their lives. And I do think that by us being able to use some of the features to pass down some of these values, those will be very helpful. Although I do know that there's you can pass down some valuables in the app as well.
Yes,
I saw
definitely.
you can have like a normal will and things like that.
Yes, a sophisticated will with conditional bequest.
So I saw that. But back to your point, I do think that it is. You're asking about millennial. I do think that yes, it sits well with me. And
I mean, everybody from the age of 21, they can start writing a will, right? But for us at Heritance, it's not just about the tangible assets. At now, people still have the mindset that, writing will is about passing down the dollars, cents, and assets. But for us, we believe, before you can manage all this properly, we think about time, we think about appropriate time, the appropriate mindset, and all this kind of thing, which are values, in simple term values, intangibles. So do you think these are the kind of thinking, and this is the angle that younger millennials or like even millennials, older millennials, should start thinking about more and start advocating for it themselves, empowering themselves?
What comes to mind is that I guess maybe if you talk about my parents' age, maybe death is something that's a taboo, and people don't want to talk about it, especially for Chinese. But maybe what I would say is that for millennials, or maybe I speak for myself, death is not a taboo. As I said, it's a certainty.
Yes.
It will happen. And writing a will and leaving some of these legacy values and valuables, it used to be something that seems expensive, or something that, okay, when I'm very well established, when I'm very old, then I better go and leave a will.
That is one common trait that everybody falls for.
I guess that's but I think because it is not a taboo, because it is a certainty, and if it's easy to do so, then I don't see why people don't do it. Or why